Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're diving into one of the most thought-provoking questions. If God created everything, then who created God? This is a question that has puzzled people for centuries, and it's one that touches on the heart of religion, philosophy, and even science. You might have heard the idea that God created everything we see around us, the world, the universe, and all life. But if God made all of that, it raises a big question. Who made God? Is God someone who also had a creator? Or is God different somehow from everything else in the universe? These are deep and complex questions, and they don't have easy answers. But they're important because they challenge us to think about life, existence, and the nature of the world we live in. In this video, we'll be looking at this question from a few different angles. We'll start by exploring the religious ideas about God. For example, many people believe that God is eternal, meaning God has no beginning or end. If God is truly eternal, then the question of who created God might not even apply. But what does that really mean, and how do we understand it? We'll also take a look at some philosophical ideas. Philosophers have spent a lot of time thinking about the idea of creation, and they've come up with different ways of explaining the world and its origins. Some argue that everything must have a cause, so if everything has a cause, why doesn't God? How can something be uncaused? We'll dive into some of these big ideas and try to make sense of them. Lastly, we'll touch on a bit of science. Science has its own explanations about how the universe began, but does it offer any answers to the question of who created God? Science can help us understand the how of the universe, but can it really explain the why? The goal of this video is to explore these different perspectives, religious, philosophical, and scientific, to get a deeper understanding of this fascinating question. So stay tuned as we try to unravel the mystery of who or what created God. Understanding the concept of God. To understand the question of who created God, it's important to first understand what different religions say about who God is and what role he plays in creation. Let's take a look at how God is viewed in a few major religions: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. In Christianity, God is seen as the creator of everything. Christians believe that God is eternal, meaning he has no beginning or end. God is also seen as omnipotent, which means all-powerful. According to Christian teachings, God created the world in 6 days and continues to sustain it. Christians believe that God is a personal being who is involved in the lives of people and can be known through prayer, scripture, and the life of Jesus Christ. In Islam, God is called Allah. Like Christians, Muslims believe that Allah is the creator of everything. Allah is eternal and beyond human understanding. Islam teaches that Allah is omnipotent, all-knowing, and merciful. Muslims believe that everything in the universe exists because of Allah's will, and the Quran, the holy book of Islam, says that Allah created the heavens, the earth, and everything in them. Just like in Christianity, Allah is considered to be eternal and without beginning or end. In Judaism, God is called Yahweh, and he is also seen as the creator of everything. In Jewish thought, God is eternal, uncaused, and all-powerful. The Jewish Bible, called the Torah, teaches that God created the world and everything in it, and that he has a special relationship with his people, the Israelites. Like the other two religions, Judaism teaches that God is beyond time and space, meaning he exists outside of the physical limits of the universe. Now, let's talk about some important qualities of God that are common across these religions. First, God is seen as eternal. He has no beginning or end. This means that God exists outside of time, and the idea of who created God doesn't quite apply, because God simply is. Second, God is uncaused, meaning he doesn't depend on anything or anyone else to exist. He is the origin of everything else. And third, God is omnipotent, all-powerful. This means he can do anything, and he is not limited by anything in the universe. Finally, all three religions agree that God is outside of time and space. This means that God is not bound by the same rules that apply to the physical universe. While everything in the universe exists in time and space, God is beyond that, which makes it hard for our human minds to fully understand him. To understand how God exists, we need to look at some key theological ideas that help explain his nature. These ideas have been developed over centuries by philosophers and religious thinkers. Let's break down three important concepts: the uncaused cause, the idea of God being eternal, and the doctrine of creation ex nihilo, creation out of nothing. A. The uncaused cause argument. One of the main arguments for God's existence is the idea of the uncaused cause. This philosophical idea suggests that everything in the universe has a cause, something that made it happen. But if everything has a cause, then there must be something that caused the first thing to happen. This first cause is called the uncaused cause, and many religious thinkers argue that God is the uncaused cause. This idea was explored by the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, who called it the prime mover. Aristotle believed that everything in the universe is in motion, but that there must be something that started that motion. This prime mover doesn't need to be moved by anything else. It simply is and causes everything else to move. In a similar way, Thomas Aquinas, a Christian philosopher, argued that God is the first cause that set everything in motion. In his famous work, The 5 Ways, Aquinas explained that since everything in the universe has a cause, there must be a first cause that itself was not caused by anything else. This first cause, he argued, is God. B. The concept of God being eternal. Another important theological idea is that God is eternal, meaning he exists outside of time. While everything in the universe has a beginning and an end, God is timeless. He has no beginning and no end. This concept of eternity helps explain why God doesn't need a creator. If God is outside of time, then the question of who created God doesn't apply. God simply is, and he has always existed. The Bible speaks about God's eternal nature in verses like Revelation 22:13, where God says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last." These words suggest that God is beyond time. He is the beginning and the end of everything. C. The doctrine of creation ex nihilo. Finally, many religious traditions teach that God created everything ex nihilo, which means out of nothing. This idea says that God didn't create the world from pre-existing materials. Instead, he created everything from nothing at all. This suggests that God doesn't need anything else to exist. He is the ultimate source of everything. The idea of creation ex nihilo highlights the power and uniqueness of God. If God created everything from nothing, then he himself has no need for a creator. He is the source of all that exists, and his existence is independent of anything else. When we think about the question of who created God, we can approach it through some important philosophical ideas. These ideas help us understand why the concept of a first cause makes sense, and why God might not need a creator. Let's break down two key arguments: the issue of infinite regress and the challenge of who created God. A. Infinite regress versus first cause. One of the main ideas philosophers use to explain the need for a first cause is the problem of infinite regress. Infinite regress means that every event or action in the universe has a cause. But if every cause itself needs another cause, we could go back forever, without ever reaching the beginning. For example, if you ask, who caused the first event? And then ask, who caused that? Over and over again, you could end up in an endless loop. This is called infinite regress, and it doesn't make sense logically because it doesn't explain how anything started in the first place. Philosophers argue that in order to stop this endless chain of causes, there must be a first cause, something that started everything but doesn't need a cause itself. This first cause is often seen as God. If God is the first cause, then he doesn't rely on anything else to exist. He is the starting point that sets everything else in motion. Without a first cause, philosophers argue that there would be no explanation for why anything exists at all. B. The challenge of who created God. Now, let's return to the question, if everything has a cause, why doesn't God need one? This is a paradox because it seems to contradict the idea that everything must have a cause. But here's where things get tricky. Philosophers and theologians explain that God is outside of time and space. Unlike everything else in the universe, which exists in time and requires a cause, God exists in a way that is beyond our understanding. God is often seen as eternal, meaning he has no beginning or end. If God is eternal, he doesn't need a cause because he has always existed. This is very different from anything we experience in the world, where everything has a cause and is limited by time. God, being outside of time, isn't bound by the same rules. In this way, the question, who created God, doesn't apply, because God's nature is fundamentally different from the things we know and understand. These ideas show that the nature of God may go beyond human logic and understanding, challenging us to think in ways that are hard to fully grasp with our limited perspective. While many believe in God as the creator of everything, there are also arguments and perspectives that challenge this idea. Let's look at two important points: the atheistic view and the theory of the universe's self-creation. A. The atheistic view. Atheism is the belief that there is no God or gods. Some atheists argue that the concept of God is a human creation, something we made up to explain the world and the mysteries of life. They suggest that God doesn't need to be created because he doesn't exist at all. Instead, they believe that human beings created the idea of God to answer big questions about existence, life, and the universe. According to this view, people have invented gods throughout history to make sense of things that were otherwise difficult to understand. Agnostics, on the other hand, are not sure whether God exists. They argue that we cannot know for certain whether there is a creator because it's something beyond human understanding. From an agnostic perspective, the idea of a creator might be something that can never be fully proven or disproven. B. The argument of the universe's self-creation. Another idea comes from science, particularly the Big Bang theory and cosmic evolution. The Big Bang theory suggests that the universe began with a massive explosion around 13.8 billion years ago. This explosion set everything in motion, and the universe expanded into what we see today. Some argue that the universe doesn't need a creator because it started naturally, without any divine intervention. In addition to the Big Bang, there are ideas about cosmic evolution, which explain how stars, planets, and galaxies formed over time through natural processes. Some scientists believe that the universe could have come into being and developed all on its own, without needing a creator. According to this view, the universe is simply a result of physical laws and natural forces, not the work of a god. These arguments challenge the idea that God is the necessary cause of the universe. offering alternative explanations that don't require a creator. The question of who created God may be something that is beyond our full understanding. No matter how much we study philosophy, religion, or science, some mysteries of the universe seem to be out of reach for the human mind. This question, like many other big questions about life and existence, touches on areas where we might never have all the answers. Sometimes the mystery itself is part of what makes life interesting and meaningful. In spiritual life, the role of faith is important. Faith allows people to believe in things that they cannot fully see or understand. For many, belief in God is an act of trust in something bigger than ourselves, something beyond what we can explain. The mystery of God, or the universe, helps people grow in faith and find deeper meaning in life. It's through wrestling with these mysteries that people's faith is tested and strengthened. The unknown also plays a big role in human life. There are many questions we may never fully answer, like what happens after we die, or why does the universe exist? But rather than causing fear, these questions can inspire awe. They remind us that there is more to life than what we can see and understand. People have spent centuries thinking about the ultimate purpose of existence, and this journey of questioning and searching is a big part of being human. Ultimately, humans often wrestle with these deep questions because they want to make sense of their place in the world. While we may never fully answer the question of who created God, the search itself can lead to growth in understanding, mystery, and spiritual connection. It's this ongoing exploration that helps shape our lives and beliefs. In today's video, we've explored a big and challenging question. If God created everything, then who created God? We've looked at this question from several different perspectives: theological, philosophical, and skeptical. From a theological standpoint, many believe that God is eternal, uncaused, and beyond time and space. In this view, God doesn't need a creator because he has always existed and exists outside the laws of the universe that apply to everything else. This idea is supported by religious texts and thinkers who argue that God is the first cause, the one who set everything into motion. From a philosophical perspective, we discussed the issue of infinite regress, the idea that everything must have a cause. Philosophers argue that there must be a first cause to avoid an endless chain of causes. This first cause, many believe, is God. But we also explored the skeptical view, where some people believe that God is a human construct, or that the universe itself could have come into being without a creator, through processes like the Big Bang and cosmic evolution. In the end, this question may be beyond our full comprehension. The mystery of God's existence and the origins of the universe are things that might never be fully understood by the human mind. We may never have all the answers, but the search for understanding can lead to personal growth, faith, and awe. I encourage you to think about your own perspective on this age-old question. What do you believe? What are your thoughts on the nature of God and the universe? Please share your ideas in the comments section. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Your support helps this channel grow and allows me to bring you more discussions on fascinating topics like this one. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. The more we seek answers to life's big questions, the more we discover how much there is to explore. Whether you find answers or enjoy the mystery, it's the journey of questioning and reflecting that brings us closer to understanding, even if only a little. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.